Hello everyone, today we're going to have a look at 7.4 quadratic equations. So first I'm going to learn you what product is zero means, and afterwards I'm going to show you how you can solve quadratic equations by factorizing. You've already learned how to solve quadratic equations without, and today you're going to learn the methods how you can use it with. But first, the product at zero. This is a very essential part of understanding how to solve quadratic equations with factorizing. So first, from a times b equals 0, it follows that a equals 0 or b equals 0. So this is really difficult. So I'm going to show you some examples with numbers. First of all, minus 7 times 0 equals 0. But 0 times 814 equals 0 as well. So if this minus 7 was a and 0 was b, then a times b equals 0 if or b equals 0 or a equals 0. If I have k times 0, it equals 0 as well. And 0 times j is 0. Now, the more difficult part. If I have 8 times 4 minus 4, it's actually 8 times 0. And that's 0. The same is for p times minus h plus h. And that's equal to p times 0. And that's 0 as well. So if we have the double bracket, so 3 minus 3 times 9 minus 7, you will have 0 times 2, and that's 2. And 3 minus 4 times 9 minus 9 equals minus 1 times 0, and that's 0. So you can see that everything times 0 equals 0. So if I have p minus 3 times p minus 9. It is 0 when, or, and I'm going to draw it, or p minus 3 is 0, so we could call it a, just like over there, or p minus 9 is 0. As we can see over there as well. So if we had a times b equals 0, then or a needs to be 0 or b. So that means that or p minus 3 needs to be 0 because that's a, or p minus 9 needs to be 0. And I've got something minus 3 equals 0. So I know that p needs to be 3. Or something minus 9 equals 0, so p equals 9. You can always check. So if I would put p equals 3 into my given formula, now I will have 3 minus 3 times 3 minus 9. I know that 3 minus 3 equals 0, and everything times 0 equals 0. So that one is correct. So if I have 9 minus 3 times 9 minus 9, that's 0 as well, because 9 minus 9 equals 0, and everything times 0 equals 0. So you need to fact that you put something, a name A, you name something B, and you need to make sure that it's 0. We're going to practice this. So from A times B equals 0, it follows that A equals 0 or B equals 0. So it could be, you could get a question like this. So solve a x plus 2, x minus 2 equals 0. You need to solve this. So we know that x plus 2 needs to be 0 or x minus 5 needs to be 0 because we have to make something a and we need to make something b. Because something times a letter, a number, times 0 is always 0. So or x plus 2 equals 0 or x minus 5 equals 0. So we know that v equals or. So x needs to be minus 2 or x equals 5. So remember, when you're going to solve quadratic equations, you always have two answers. Two possible answers. It's also possible that you need to solve 2a plus 4 times 3a minus 9 equals 0. Again, you're going to make one thing equal to a and the other product is b. So 2a plus 4 needs to be 0 or 3a minus 9 needs to be 0. Otherwise, the answer could not be 0. So we know that 2a equals minus 4. And you really have to think about the balance method again. So I did minus 4 over there, so I did minus 4 over there. And or 3a equals 9, so I did plus 9 over there and plus 9 over there. The last step of the balance method was to divide everything by the number before the letter. So I need to divide it by 2. So, and I need to divide this by 3. So a equals minus 2 or a equals 3. And that's your final answer. Now we're going to do it's a bit more difficult. So we're going to solve quadratic equations by factorising. So now we've got a quadratic formula like x squared plus 8x plus 15 equals 0. I cannot solve this by using the balance method because I've got an x squared and an x. So it's impossible to solve it by the normal balance method. So we need to use the product sum because we've got three terms. We've got an x squared, an x, and a number. So first of all, with the product sum method, what's the sum, what's the product? So we know that 8 is the sum because it's the number before the letter. We know that 15 equals a product. So we need to put it in between brackets and I will get x plus 3 times x plus 5 because 3 plus 5 equals 8 and 3 times 5 equals 15. If you forgot how to do this, I really advise you to look at the video of 7.3 because I will use exact the same numbers to show you how you can factorize this by using the product sum methods. So we know that this is A and this is B and one of the two needs to be 0 in order for the answer to be 0. So x plus 3 equals 0 or x plus 5 equals 0. So we know x must be minus 3 or x must be minus 5. So this is your answer. Again, I've used the rule of a times b equals 0. So or a needs to be 0 or b. The last example. So solve x squared minus 2 plus x. So again, first find with the product sum methods, factorize it. And of course, it's only a quadratic equation if it's got an equal sign. So do not forget that when doing your exercises. So x squared minus 2 plus 1x equals 0. Don't forget that there is an invisible 1 in front of the x. So you may always write it over there. So we need to determine what the product is and what the sum is. And I know that the letter on its own is always a product. And I know that the number before the letter is always the sum. Again, if I use the product sum methods, I will have x plus 2 times x minus 1, because 2 minus 1 equals 1, so that's the sum, and 2 times minus 1 is the product, because that's minus 2. And that is 0. Don't forget the 0. So I know that this is A and that is B. So one of the two must be 0. So x plus 2 equals 0 or x minus 1 equals 0. So I know that x equals minus 2 or x equals 1. So if you can see with this step immediately what x needs to be and what the other x needs to be, so the or sign, they do not need to write this down. But if you cannot see it immediately, then please do write it down. So good luck with doing the exercises, and if there are any questions, please ask me. And if you have any questions about the product, how I factorize it with the product sum factor method, then have a look at the other video.